pretty exciting. We're on the home run and we've got some great speakers to finish off today. And I was just talking to two of them and they've rated themselves very highly on their feedback form. So be prepared for awesomeness, they told me. So let's find out who it is. So the next one in your book says the Sandringham Wetland Complex. And we're going to hear from Carlos and Jason this afternoon about a project that's been going on for quite some time now. So Carlos is our second international man of mystery, comes from Brazil, and he came here for 6 months to learn English. 4 months to learn English because he's so smart, it didn't take him long. And 16 years later, he's still here. He loves the NRM work he does, and he moved up here after he finished uni, and he specialises in waterways, sustainability, stream bank restoration. He's also currently the Drought Resilience Project Officer for the Mackay Whitsundays Drought Node. So he also told me that Jason is an absolute inspiration because of his passion to leave such a legacy on his property, to make sure that he leaves it in a much better state than he found it. So Jason didn't tell me that he was an inspiration. Jason said he had nothing special to tell me about himself. But he did win. He's our second award winner. Last year he won the Queensland Farmers Federation Reef Conservation Champion Award for the work that he's done with his wife Sala over the last 5 years on their sugarcane and grazing property. So they've worked with Reef Catchments to do this work, and they've improved their management practices to greatly benefit around 90 hectares of the Sandringham Wetlands. So I can't wait to hear your presentation because I seriously know it's going to be awesome. There's lots of interesting stuff about Jason that he didn't tell me until I found out a bit more. He actually drives a ship loader at Hay Point and comes up with lots of cunning plans and schemes while he's doing that. And so he's been to South America and sailed a small boat around Cape Horn, and he also builds boats in his spare time. So I'm going to ask these two men up here. So come on up, Jason and Carlos. We want to hear more about the wetlands.
All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for that, Wendy, and thanks for having us here today. Thanks for the warm welcome, and look, thanks for the opportunity to be part of this. And all jokes aside, we've had some wonderful speakers here today. Now, well, just in contrast to those wonderful speakers, Carlos and I are quite amateurish. We're up here. We're keeping each other company up here. Carlos is the technical support, and but look. Hopefully we'll have a bit of fun, and we'll share I'll be able to share the journey that we've been on this project and continuing into the future. So Carlos you're the clicker, Carlos, are you? Yep, you do that. Right. Otherwise we'll get in more trouble than Mickey Mouse here. Well, look, yeah, guys. So the farm is located locally here between Mackay and Serena, right on the highway. It's anyone that travels that route there, like it's the side of the old Max truck stop. So you can see this lagoon from the highway. In fact, you can't see the highway in there, but a lot of public interest in that. There's about between 12 and 14,000 cars a day come past that location, and it's quite humbling to see the amount of interest that the general public has in what we as farmers do. So that location's got a lot of exposure, and people are interested in it. So that's a great thing that Reef Catchments are doing and helping us to achieve some of the visions and goals that perhaps, without their help, we would not be able to achieve. So you'll hear me, or I guess that's the outcome of our, the title of our talk today is Balancing Conservation Outcomes and Enhanced Productivity. So you'll see me, or you'll hear me talk a lot about wanting and trying to achieve the best of both worlds, because I really think that that's important. That sustainable word gets bandied around a lot these days, but if you stop and think about it, to be really sustainable and to really go into the future confidently, you do need to have those conservation outcomes, as in that your asset, the land, is at worst you're taking it forward neutral, your impact is neutral at worst, and at best you want to be A+. And that's got to correlate into the business world as well, because if you think about what a legacy is, and what I want to hand to my family, it's an asset, the land in better shape, in good shape, sustainable shape, and also financially sustainable, so that they don't have to split it up, sell it, do whatever that happens these days. Right, I'm going to hand over to Carlos here because, Carlos will introduce himself, but when I first come across reef catchments, I didn't really know what reef catchments did, and I'd heard about them. You'd hear about them on the local ABC radio occasionally, etc., etc. But my experience with them has been an awesome one, and I'd like Carlos to tell you what he's capable of.
So thanks, guys. Thanks, Gilly, for organizing this beautiful event. Thanks, Wendy. And thanks for all the presenters that already show some of those, their experiences and share with us. So yes, as you can see in there, that's the map of the NRM region for the Mackay-Whitsunday-Isaac area. And we fit into that catchment there. So above north of us is the NQ Dry Tropics NRM group, and to the south of us is the Fitzroy Basin Association. So throughout Queensland, all the catchments have a natural resource management group that look after the area, and we apply for federal, state, philanthropic funding to be able to provide, to create those projects to assist the community to better manage their land, improve the practices, and in our case here in the reef catchments, also improve the water quality that reaches the Great Barrier Reef Lagoon. I won't take much time. We have a lot to show. We have a lot of videos that we done last year, end of May, at the end of the wet season last year, and we'll highlight some of the activities we've done, and hopefully we'll have lots of questions at the end. So. For the last couple of years, we've been working with the community, especially with some interested landholders willing to improve their practices through Reef Trust Phase 7. And Jason Bradford is a really good example of it. For the last couple of years, he's been chasing us up, seeing if what funding was available, and he wants to improve his land, and we've been working together since.
The complex itself has changed a little bit in that time. That's one of the reasons that drove me to seek help from you guys in reef catchments, because this grass here is an introduced species from South America. It's called hymenacne, and it's a fantastic grass if you're a cattleman. I call it it's a cattleman's dream, but it's a barrow's nightmare. And the reason for that is that it can, when it's not managed properly, it can be invasive. If you do a little bit of a pan around, you'll see the potential of it, like it gets thick. And it'll grow in water up to about 2 metres deep. So we're pretty fortunate at the moment in that there is a bit of open water here, but a few years ago, due to various different things, this entire complex was almost choked with hymenacne. And that raised some alarm bells. That's not what I remembered as a boy. As a young bloke, it was lily pads like you see there now, and a heap of native reeds along this edge here, and a lot of open water. I grew up here, so I'm 50 years old now, and as a boy, this was a bit of a paradise, because I spent many hours down here exploring, and it's a bit of a nature wonderland. And so hence I guess I fell in love with it. It's in my blood. We spent a lot of time in the marine environment here in the creek, and fishing and exploring, and it was really a great childhood. So what I want for this, what my visions for this is to be a financially viable enterprise, grazing cattle, but I want those outcomes for nature as well. So I want the best of both worlds. I think what that looks like, and I guess this is what the vision is that the passage from that marine environment into this freshwater environment is enhanced. It makes it easier for them to get in here. And once they're in here, their survival in here is also enhanced. So that when the right time of the year comes, those fish can head back over the wall, back into the marine environment, back into nature. Today it's a swan day. Tomorrow it might be pelican day. Who knows what? And people enjoy it. We have bird watchers listed on the internet what they've seen here. We have painting groups come down and they paint it, and I'd like to expand on that. So this is what it's all about. This is what the with those wetlands and the fish ladders, we are trying to feed this system right here. All right, guys. Hey, yeah, this talk, in contrast to our other excellent speakers, is probably going to be a series of videos with a bit of disjointed sort of mumbling in between. So, but look, hopefully that gives you an overview of what we're trying to do there. So, just a couple of more details. That photo you see is an old photo. It's about the oldest aerial photo I could find of the place back in 1959. You can see there's no sugarcane there. There's no ponded pastures. There's trees all over the place, and so we've been from that to where we are today, in I guess the blink of an eye in an ecological sense anyway, at least. As I said, we're halfway between Mackay and Serena. The project came about because of, as I said in the video there, that swamp, the wetlands down there was getting choked with hymenacne, and I didn't like it. I knew what was being recruited from that marine environment into those wetlands, and how can they possibly survive with that hymenacne. However, you know, I needed the hymenacne too. We'll go into that a little bit later on. The hymenacne is an important part of the business. So again, here's those words. I wanted the best of both worlds. So look, I contacted Reef Catchments. I didn't really know what they did. Look, this took a couple of years, and eventually some funding became available. They approached me, and the rest is history, and we'll talk about that today. Since taking over, there's just I'm probably a third generation sort of farmer down here now. My grandparents bought that in the late 60s. A few titles, etc., etc. So to do a successful succession plan for my parents to enable them to retire on the farm, and for my brother and I to end up with half the farm each. And news story, and succession, as anyone will know in the rural industry, is a big deal, and it's something to be thought about. You'd like to have your afterthoughts first with that. But we've had a successful succession, and I've been in charge of it for around about five or 6 years there now. And when I first came into the management side of there, I guess what sort of drove my thinking was I asked myself some questions, and probably 3 questions. The first one was, what have I got here? What exactly have I got here? And I asked that in both the sense, the asset sense, you know, what species have we got here, etc., and also what sort of a business have I got here? So what have I got here? That was the starting point. That led to a second question. The second question is, what should I have here? So if I was doing everything properly here, and the place was humming, what should I have? What would an A look like? And that drove a bit of thought. And the third question is a little bit of imagination land, I guess. And that's a simple question too. And it's, what could I have here? What could I have here? So if I've got 10 species of birds here now, or wildlife, or whatever it is, and you know, X amount of fish or whatever, is that what I should have? Should being in Mackay in North Queensland, should I have 20? So let's have a think about that. And really, what if I had the right environmental conditions or the right business conditions? What could I have here? So that's what I say about the questions. The vision, I wrote a vision statement to send into Reef Catchments to apply for help, and it was around a lot of that research. So being a shiploader operator there at Hay Point in my spare time, I do get a bit of time to do some research, and I have a curious mind, and I like to delve deeply into things. So I had a lot of plans. So I wrote that down on a piece of paper, and that was my vision for the place, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I think that's an important thing to do as well. Imagine a little bit, research, have a vision. And I won't bore you too much with this, but management philosophy. Look, I have a real respect for what our predecessors have done, whether that be your own family or whoever it was that were custodians of that land before us. And I reckon that we got a hell of a lot to learn from what our predecessors did, in the knowledge that we've lost a lot of knowledge. Just think about, if we didn't have the luxury of going off to Woolies and buying our lettuce, would we know how to grow a lettuce garden these days without Google? Would we know how to make those lettuce grow nicely without going down to Bunnings and buying some bagged fertiliser? Do we have that knowledge? Because our grandparents had that knowledge. They knew how to do that. And so it's a bit of a sobering thought when you think about it like that. So my philosophy is looking forward, but also looking back. So looking forward, I genuinely want to leave this place better. I want to get to that, when I ask myself the question, what could I have here? That's what I want. If I should have koalas there, that's what I want. If I should be able to make a living off that and hand it to my children, so that they don't have to sell it and they can comfortably, we can have our afterthoughts first and we can set it up in such a way that remains in the Bradford family, that's what I want. So we should click the next slide, Carlos. Look, we'll touch on some stuff here. Again, a little video embedded here. So some of the things that Reef Catchments help with immediately were some off-stream watering points and some fencing to basically knock the place into shape. One of my learnings, in case I forget to say it later on, is that there's a certain amount of infrastructure that is required for success. You can have the best intentions in the world and be trying to achieve things, but without the right infrastructure in place, you're pushing a bit of that stuff uphill that Dick spoke about earlier. But having said that, to balance that a little bit, it's got to be the right infrastructure. I'm not talking about shiny tractors and trucks and Dodge Utes and all that. You know, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, in this case, it's wire and water. Wire and water, you know, those two very simple things went a hell of a long way to transforming what this place looks like and what it will look like in the future. So you better play the video, please, Carlos. All right, so this is one of our watering points, Carlos, and they've been very successful. What it's done is it's enabled us to cut these paddocks down, and especially what I like about it is that the funding extended to mitigating one of my hassles that I have putting water troughs, fixed water troughs in, because what happens is inevitably, traditionally, the troughs end up in the middle of a mud hole, and I didn't want that. So we did a bit of research and we come up with this product right here. It's a GeoHex, it's a plastic mesh. We put a little pad of gravel down.
They're made out of recyclable plastics, aren't they?
They are, yeah. And we put this, I think it might be 65mm deep mesh, and we just laid it down. They clip together very easily. And we filled it with gravel, and as you can see, they have proven their worth already. So for erosion control, I'm very happy with them and with that product, and I want to do some more of it in fragile areas. It's been really fascinating to see the cattle. They prefer to use these troughs than they do the groundwater. What that does, it gives me the ability to supplement the water. So I can lock them in a paddock, but they have no other water source because they're smaller paddocks now. I can supplement them through the water. It's cheap, it's easy. I'm really wrapped with it.
And it will reduce your costs to running the cattle in the long term.
Exactly. But what we do have is these off-stream watering points. And these are basically like a miniature hydrant, if you like. All right, so what we're looking at here, we've got a poly pipeline running down this laneway, a little offshoot here. And inside here is basically a hydrant. So it's its own little check valve and hydrant in here. So I just have these plastic troughs, like you can see in the background here. They're nice and light. I can carry them around on the back of the buggy or the ute or whatever. And I put them anywhere I want. I have a riser. It's simply a matter of pressing these in, and water flows. And when the time comes to move the cattle, it's again I simply stop the flow, empty the trough, and carry it to the next location. And to undo it, there's no taps, no valves, anything like that. It's just simply release, boom, and there we have it. All right, guys, when you see that estuary system, I forgot to say before, anyone that does a bit of fishing down there, but this property is bounded by Alligator Creek on the southern boundary, Sandringham Creek on the northern boundary, and basically, the Bruce Highway to the east. So we really are in that marine fragile environment. Anyway, back on the water. So with the help of Carlos and his illustrious gang, 8 permanent troughs, 4 hydrants installed there. As I said, the cattle use it preferentially over the surface water, which where we came from there, we had no troughs. It was the cattle. It was all. We got a lot of surface water, so we didn't need troughs. But we'll talk about it a bit more, I guess, what it's done. But yeah, they do that. I think. Yeah. So basically, the only other thing to say there is that it does. What I have noticed, it really significantly reduces the amount of time those cattle spend going to those dams and wetlands and the associated pugging with it. I hope, Dick, I'm not going to get into trouble here. I've been playing here a little bit. But what this does is water in every paddock, along with the associated fencing that we'll talk about in a minute. It does give you that control and the flexibility to manage the grazing. Now, this is another concept that I'm really trying to embrace. Instead of using steel, which depreciates and rusts and you have to repair it and register it and all those things, and diesel, which is expensive, instead of using that, as much as I possibly can, I use the livestock to do the work for me. And so that gives me opportunities to manage problems or to make improvements. What you're looking at in this slide here is a little experiment from my shiploader. For $1,500, I bought a little wick wiper that goes in the front of the tractor. That grass is a native spirabilous grass. It's related to the giant rat's tail grass and parramatta grass that you heard a lot about. It's not as invasive, it's not as bad as those grasses, but it's also not one of the 3P grasses either. So it's not a desirable grass. Now look, don't get me wrong, I also have cane on this enterprise, so I'm well acquainted with herbicides and I use plenty of them. But my gut feel is with herbicides is that it's not doing my health any good, it's not doing the soil health any good. So I try and reduce the herbicides whenever I can. That paddock there, so what I did there is I put the cattle in to graze it down. They, of course, ate the ice cream out of the paddock, all the palatable grasses, the ones that I want to foster. They ate them down. They left the spirabilous grass there. So if the spirabilous grass wants to stick its head up, I come along with the wick wiper. And this way I'm not spraying chemical through a broadacre boom or anything like that. The chemical is literally touching the plant that it's intended to kill. And my intention is to let those... As that's going backwards, the more desirable grasses should be going forward, and I'll be giving them a little hand to get on top of it. So hopefully going forward, getting better and better. Oh, that's just some more photos up close of that wick wiper. I've been pretty impressed with it for $1,500. I think it's to do that entire area that you can see in that slide there, I've used about 2.5 litres of chemical, you know. So really efficient, very selective, very targeted. Early stages yet, but hopefully it's going to be an asset.
So this video here is about the fencing work Jason done.
So Carlos, this is back to that 32-inch high single wire, nice and easy, cheap to erect. If you look along the fence line here, you'll see the effects of grazing, 10 days worth of grazing and no grazing. And Carlos, the other thing that I like about this fence, so it extends right down the length of this, I call it the scar. It extends right down into that tree line and round the corner up over to those trees in the distance there, is that if you look out on the exposed mudflat there, no tracks. So, that sediment in there is in a lot better position to stay where it is than if it's pugged up and heavily walked on. And these little bits of fencing, what we're trying to achieve here is a little bit of land type fencing. If you look down here, this is that same western fence as we spoke about earlier, but only this time it's 4 strands. The ability of the 4 strands that you get that bottom wire up a little bit so the cattle graze underneath it and they clean that foliage for you, so you don't have that shortening out problem. So I think that that's going to be fairly successful. But if you look down here, you can sort of see the line where the Pangola grass ends, the soil type changes, it comes into the saltwater influence, that's the marine couch. So what I tend to do is I'll keep the cattle up in these type of areas when it's wet and fragile. These areas are fragile, and I can look after it. So that's that sediment loss again. Okay, so a few things to talk about there. You'll notice that those fences are sort of non-traditional fences. I found myself building in the process of subdividing. Basically, when I took this block over, there was 2 paddocks and the gate was permanently open. So essentially, there was none. I found myself making the conventional rosewood post, 4-wire barb fences. A lot of time, a lot of money, you know, and with the more control grazing, the rotational grazing, what tends to happen is that, yeah, the cattle will eat the ice cream out of the paddocks, and if you leave them in there for a day or so too long, they'll start putting their head through the fence and having a look at next door. The grass is always greener, don't you know? So I was going back to those fences 6 months after I constructed them, and I put a lot of love and did everything right, and there was stretched wires and broken ties, and I didn't want to do that forever and a day. So back to the shiploader again, research, and I figured that the solution may well be in electric fences. The other thing I had to take into consideration here was the bird life on the place. We get a hell of a lot of bird life, and you know, like, it's just a fact of life that even with I sort of went to a plain top wire with the barb, but even then, you know, you could still have some wildlife interactions there, and that's not desirable. What the electric fencing system did for me there is it actually created a fence that the cattle don't mess with. I've progressed to a point where I actually train the weaners and that there now. There's some photos of that later. But they learn as young cattle, or even as older cattle, if you have the right electric fence, and they will learn to respect it, and they don't touch fences. They don't push through fences. That means that you're not going back. You're not continually repairing fences. It brings in a few hassles. Well, traditional hassles with electric fence are, in this country, the grass growth is so prolific and vigorous at times that it shorts the fence out. And one solution to that is that I could go and buy a fancy mower. You can get them, you know, like you put them on the side of your tractor and they go under the fence and they work their way around the post, and you could spend your life mowing, you know, and doing that and replacing mowers. But I wanted a solution where, again, those cattle, as far as possible, can do the work for me. Hence, that I showed you a 4-wire fence just there in the video. 4-wire gets the wires up enough. The cattle have the respect that they don't push through the fences, but they're also smart, and they know that they can go under the fences. Hey, presto, problem solved. You know, the more wires you put on a fence, the more expensive it is. So I decided to do some more research, and I researched that in the right system, you can use a single wire to successfully control cattle at a height of about 32 inches. So out comes the tape measure, and in goes a fence. And you can't get much cheaper fencing than that. Timber posts, 15 metres apart, single wire, trained cattle, happy days. I've been very successful with that, very happy with it. I've had it in some high pressure situations, beside sugarcane, next stop the highway, and I've got great confidence in it. So that has been a success story for me. And you know, I hope hopefully to extrapolate that out a little bit, if somebody has got a bit of country that they want to try it with, you don't need to go to crazy lengths. Try a single wire at 32 inches high. Oh. Okay. Training some weaners behind the Gallagher fencing systems. They are learning not to touch it. This saves me money, and running some weaners here, and I run them up a laneway, and I do feed them a bit of hay for a week or so. I stop buying hay then. I've got grass, and I can train them at the same time. The bottom photo is there, where I give them a portion of the laneway every day. Kills 2 birds with 1 stone. I'm not buying hay. I'm training the weaners to go back in the yard every day. I'm interacting with him. They learn to respect the fence. Tick. We're running out of time here, but yeah, we better. Have we got time to play this video? Okay. One of the things that is part of the vision is that, that on big tides, on king tides, the salt water will come right up here. You can see that. You can see exactly where it comes to by the vegetation type. So here we have Pangola grass and here we have marine couch. So the tide line is right here. So that's a blessing. This marine couch is wonderful feed for the cattle at certain times of the year because it's irrigated by nature. The tide comes in, it goes green, it's got minerals, the cattle love it. The downside is that if you let the cattle in here at the wrong time of the year, they walk across these muddy areas and the mud's wet. So that tide sweeps in and it sweeps back out again. And the concern is that the fine sediment loads that we're concerned about with the reef, that's a potential cause of it. That's a source of it. So what we're aiming to do here with some of that funding is to isolate these areas and only let the cattle into these areas at very select times, a la when the tides are small and the weather is dry. So when that happens, that mud won't get churned up. This ground here won't get pugged. The cattle can get the nutrients from this. I can utilise it, and then they're gone. And we've had as smallest impact on nature that we can possibly have. We're talking too much. Yeah, so I'm just saying that photo shows how fragile the system is. That's at the recent 6 metre tide the other day. So all those salt pans, all those bare sort of areas that you see me fencing out, that's what they look like in a 6 metre tide. So they are important ecological areas and they're fragile areas. Okay, so yeah, I guess at the end of the day we are running these two things, barra and beef together. And that's the aim of it. I think the next slide, Carlos. I'll just quickly talk about that hymenacne because I guess that's the genesis of the project. That hymenacne, as you can see there, that must have been at a dry time of the year there, because that's an invasive weed. It's classed as an invasive weed. I actually, as a landholder, have an obligation to do something with that. One of the things I can do with it is I could hire a drone and I could spray it out. You know, I could put an excavator through the wall there and the problem all goes away. But that particular stuff fills a gap for me because the cattle don't really like eating it in the wet season. It's fairly unpalatable in the wet season. I've got plenty of grass in anyway. The opportunity that it gives me is in the dry season when everything else is dry and the water is receding back. The brix levels in that hymenacne goes through the roof and the cattle love it. So they follow very neatly. They follow the hymenacne back, and it's a perfect opportunity to fill that feed gap that winter presents for us. You know, I've tried various different things to control it. That being one of them. You'll see that they are British breed cattle. They are heat intolerant cattle. They spent their life in the lagoon there eating hymenacne. They did a fantastic job. They cleaned the hymenacne up. But they didn't balance that. They didn't achieve that balance for me. They didn't achieve that economic theme because I was sending fat ones of them to the meatworks and I was getting $1,000 for them, where I would send skinny old cull Brahman cows beside them in the same truck and get $1,400 for them. And that's just about markets and specifications and all the rest of the stuff. That's a different story. But that didn't work. It worked on one front, but not on the other front. That's not a tick. So, plan B. Really quickly, that's just a chart where I've charted the rainfall in the blue. The blue dotted line is the rainfall that we receive on the block in the months as it's distributed through the year. The green line that you can see there is my feed availability, and you'll see that it drops away in the dry months. The hymenacne helps me deal with that. So I want that hymenacne, but I need a way to deal with it. We talked all about that. So what the project did, we'll go to the next slide there, Carlos, to expedite this. You'll see the diagram there. We dug a channel. We dug a channel from the highway right down to the back. That's a deep channel. That hymenacne doesn't really like to grow in anything above. That's deeper than about 2 metres deep, so you're naturally will exclude it from that. Because that's a big shallow area, we needed a place for the fish and the wildlife to retreat to in a dry year and still have good quality habitat. That's what that channel is. That's what those pools are. So all through that complex, there's little refuge pools. Where as the water dries back, the concept is the water will dry back, the fish have got somewhere to go and survive until they can survive that dry season and until they want to complete their cycle by getting out in the wet season. The cattle can then get the hymenectomy under control because they'll graze that down hard in the dry season. And if you graze it down hard enough in the dry season, and then the wet season comes and puts a metre or so of water over the top of it, it knocks it around enough that it doesn't become invasive. It becomes controlled. And that's what we're trying to do. You see some of those photos there, that part of this work was a fishway that was constructed on the place, and we had a little flow there recently. It's very gratifying to see the results of that. You'll see in the, just go back there, Carlos, in the bottom. Anyway, so the guys set up a flow trap. Those fish you're seeing there are coming directly out of the marine environment into the attractant flow, that is the fresh water coming out of those wetlands. They sense that, hey, here's an opportunity for me to complete my life cycle here. They go up the fishway, and on this particular day we were trapping them to see what actually comes up there. It's gratifying to get all this theory out of your head and see it in practice. So great results. You'll see all the different species there. I think it was up to about 100 fish an hour there at one point. We're recruiting, did it average at 60 or something? I don't know.
So in 3 days we had 3,000 fish going through, as small as 15 mil to as big as that eel there. And as you can see in the top left picture is also a small little barramundi, which is commercially important for tourism and recreation and the industry, and also other 18 species. So it just shows how important those areas are for as nursery habitat.
All right, so that's a little bit of a summary. Michael, here, this will be one for you. Like, as part of this project, actually, I think is it 4,000 trees, Carlos, which is a bit belittled by the scale of your stuff, but 4,000 trees seemed like a big deal for us. With these tree guards here, you'll see. So we did some paddock trees, and we used some electric fencing to do some, larger sites as well. And yeah, here's my thoughts. We spoke about that. Actually, the photos are some of those fenced-in areas where we planted the young trees. So we should talk to you about density, because we were banking on about a 20% mortality rate in there, and I don't think there's been any. So that could be a thicket in years to come. Anyway, so those words are just they're echoing my thoughts from before there. Okay, so sorry about the time there, but yeah.
Do we have a quick question?
Are we going to do questions?
Well, I got told that you
Can have
got
one.
time, so but
Yeah.
they were awesome, weren't they? So how about we let them have the... Is there anyone with a burning question?
One burning question. Who's got
There's
it?
the teacher, not me.
Who's got one burning question? Come on, kids.
Looks all good.
Anybody? 3.
Just quickly, guys, I'm the drought node representative for our region now. So if you have any questions regarding drought resilience or how can you improve your property to be more climate resilient for the future, please get in touch. If you're interested in any of those activities we've done in the Sandringham Wetlands, please get in touch. If we know what you need and what you're willing to achieve, we can apply for new grants and work our best to provide you with the support that you need to get things going. We have our social media platforms in there. So Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We have a YouTube channel. Like Dick was mentioned, Christine Jones, she's been in some of our past events, and you'll find on our YouTube channel that replay from that presentations that she done in the past. So keep an eye on that. All those presentations will go to our YouTube channel in a week or so too. So keep an eye for them as well if you wanted to rewatch and share it along. And we have a newsletter that comes every second month as well. So sign up to our website and make sure you're on board and updated with all that's happening in the region. Thanks so much.